Hi, I'm Active and Uplatz. Today we are going to continue with the most application framework. Uh, we are going to see about the administrative streaming connections due to the fact that transmission of multimedia data is a central application area for most systems. The administration of the streaming connections, which are used to transmit audio and visual data, plays a central role in most systems. The following section deals with mechanisms and interfaces provided for that purpose in the application layer. Overview. In the most application specification, sources and sinks for multimedia data, audio, and video are conceptually associated with an F block. Each F block can have one or more sources and at the same time one or more sinks. The telephone F block, for example, as a source for voice output via loudspeaker system of vehicle, as well as sync for voice input via vehicle microphone system. Each source of an F block is addressed by and the ambiguous tag source NR of type unsigned byte. The sync of an F block or identified corresponding via the tag sync NR. The function stream data info can be used to determine which sources of syncs are implemented by a specific block. Stream data info FKTID 0x116 returns a list with the source numbers and a list with sync numbers of the F block. For a source, a streaming connection can be created, which is characterized by its connection label and its bandwidth. The connection label is an unambiguous identifier and described by the parameter connection label of the type unsigned word. The bandwidth is described by the parameter block width, also of the type unsigned word, which defines how many bytes per most frame are transmitted for this connection. One or more strings can be attached to an existing connection. Figure 4.10 shows the procedure used when establishing a stream connection between the source of one F block and the sink of another F block. The respective function for sources and sinks are discussed in the next paragraph. Establishment of a streaming connection, connection management, source block, sink block, and how the information exchange happens are shown here. Functions for sources, the most specification requires following functions for F blocks with source of multimedia data. These functions are specified in the specification of the general block GB Gen FP and are implemented by every F block with a source. Source info FKTID 0100, the property source info returns information about the properties of indicated source such as its content type, PCM SPDF MPEG2, source name FKTID 0x104 returns a string that identifies the indicated source. Source activity FKTID 0103. A source can be set to active or inactive using the optional function source activity. Accordingly, the source puts out data on the attached streaming connection. Allocate FKTID 0x101 by means of function allocate. The F block is requested to create a streaming connection and to connect the indicated source with it. At a certain point of time, only one source can be connected to a specific streaming connection. Allocate ext FKTID 0x018 is similar to function allocate but contains a further parameter clock source label to indicate the connection label for clock source that is necessary for isochronous connections. Deallocate FKTID 0x102 disconnects the indicated source from its streaming connection and then reallocates it to at the time master functions for sync. The following functions for F blocks having a sync for multimedia data are defined accordingly. Sync info 0x110, similar to source info, this property contains information about the indicated sync. Sync name 0x114, the identification string of the sync. Mute 0x113, this function toggles the mute status of a connection. It also enables querying the corresponding current status of the sync in case, for example, the status was set automatically with the F block to handle an error. The mute function is optional since more complex mechanisms for that purpose are used in some systems. Connect 0x111 connects the indicated sync of the F block to the corresponding streaming connection. More than one sync can be connected to the one streaming connection at one time. Disconnect 0x112 disconnects the indicated sync from a streaming connection. F-block connection master, F-block ID 0x03. The most specification defines the connection master as a central administrative unit for streaming connection. This establishes or removes a streaming connection between given sources and sinks on request. Additionally, it administrates the information about all connections that exist in a system. For this purpose, the F-block connection master implements the following functions. The CPCM build a connection, FKTID 0x200 establishes a connection between a source and a sink given by the respective F-block IDs and instant IDs, as well as the source NR and sink NR. If necessary, a streaming connection is reserved. Basically, the connection master executes a procedure shown in figure 4.9. A move connection, FKTID 0x201, removes an existing connection between an indicated source and sink. The corresponding streaming connection is released if necessary. Connection table, FKTID 0x400, keeps a list of all streaming connections currently established in a system. Available channels, FKTID 0x401, indicates the remaining bandwidth for streaming connections in a most frame in bytes. Move boundary, FKTID 0x402. This function can be used to adjust the boundary that is available bandwidth between streaming and packet connections in a MOS system. Boundary change, FKTID 0x403. A device can set a notification of this property to be informed about an ongoing boundary change. When a central instance of an infotainment system administers the streaming connections throughout the system considering additional criteria such a priority of application, this instance often also adopts the task of connection master. The F-block connection master is, in this case, often only implemented for debugging purposes. Standardized application interface. Besides the system F-blocks, the most cooperation also standardizes F-block for interfaces of typical application in vehicle infotainment systems. This chapter provides an overview of the specific application interfaces. Some selected interfaces will be discussed in more detail as example. Finally, a more detailed example for using an application F-block in a MOS system is given, taking as an example the Auxin F-block, which provides access to mobile MP3 players. Function library, kind name, F-block version description. The function catalog contains the current specification of all blocks defined by the MOS specification. It contains not only the system F-block described in section 4.3.4, but also the interfaces standards for application. Table 4.7 shows the current content of the function catalog, which all F-blocks together with their most recent version number. F-block standards by the MOS cooperation, kind administration, general F-block version 3.0.2, common coordinated function, general player 2.5.1, coordinated function for player devices, net block 0x, F-block ID 0x01, 3.0.1, system F-block implemented by every device, network master 0x02, 0.0.2, network master, connection button 0x03, 3.01, connection master. As of second quarter 2010, kind audio, vehicle 0x05, 1.6 interface for vehicle related data, diagnosis 0x06, 3.0, access to diagnostic functions, debug messages 0x07, 1.0.1, functions for controlling debug output, tool 0x0e, 1.0, F-block for test purposes, enhanced testability 0x0f, 3.0.1, necessary for compliance test, audio amplifier 0x22, 2.4.2 amplifier interface for mobile, consumer electronic devices, microphone input 0x26, 2.3.1, interface for microphones, drive audio tape player 0x030, 2.3.1 tape deck, audio disc player 3.0, CD player, CD changer, receiver, AM FM tuner, 2.4.2, radio tuner, TMC tuner, 2.3.1 tuner for traffic message, DAB tuner, 3.0, 4.0 DAB tuner for satellite digital audio radio services, communication telephone, 2.3.2 interface for connecting a mobile telephone, general phone book, 2.3.2 phone book of a telephone, navigation system graphic display, navigation unit, display unit, only unofficially released by most cooperation. A unique function 0xFF 2.3 collection of functions for the area of unique functions. The table 2.2 of the most specification, further block IDs are defined, such as a block ID 0x54 for Bluetooth that I have no specification in the function class of. These are either specifications which are not published officially, or they are placeholders for historic or future definitions. Common function general block coordinate function 0x00 to 0x1FF must be implemented in the same way by all F blocks. They are administered by most cooperation and described in the specification of the general block, which is currently available in version 3.0 FB. In addition to the functions mandatory for F block, FKTID, notification and notification check, the general F block describes functions for administration of data structures, such as for inserting the elements into an array. The functions for administration of streaming connections are also defined here. The general F block only serves as a template. When defining an F block, the necessary functions from the current version of the general F block are adapted as part of the F block specification. That is, they are not influenced by changes in a possibly new version of the general F block. If, however, an F block implements a coordinated function, this function must not deviate from the specification in the general F block. Application interface, in order to provide an insight into the application interfaces standardized by the most function catalog. Some of the interfaces for important applications from the area of vehicle infotainment system are described here in more detail. For lack of space, it is not possible to give a detailed description of all F blocks of the function catalog. CD player, CD changer, audio disc player, F block 0x31, the F block audio disc player, FPA disc PL 2.0 describes a simple CD player or CD changer. Since most cooperation define blocks for different playing devices, besides the one for CD player, there is one for cassette player. Then the general functions are summarized in the F block general player, FPGen PL 2.5. The audio disc player is a simple implementation of general player. The latter also provides additional functions such as playing DVDs. The F block audio display describes the following groups of important functions. The function described in section 4.3.5 are implemented for accessing an audio source. Via this source, the audio data of the currently played track can be made available in the MOS system, for example, for output of an amplifier. The current device status is contained in properties such as deck status and can be read out or set via corresponding operations. Deck status enables the execution of the usual actions for a player device, such as play, pause, or stop. Specific modes of the device can be set through other functions such as random, scan, or repeat. Function like audio disc info provide information about the inserted CDs or CDs concerning the type of CD, audio, video, or CD-ROM, and its format CDDA ISO 9660 in the case of a CD changer, the status of the magazine status and the active CD active disk can be queried. Additional functions give information concerning the play operations, such as the number of current track portion, or its play time portion. A controller usually requests a notification for these functions in order to indicate, for example, the remaining duration of a track, or the user interface are to be informed when the player changes to the next track in order to update the meta information for this track. To some extent, the play operation or the selection of the current track via track portion can be influenced through these functions. Amplifier, audio amplifier, block 0x22, a device with an audio amplifier that receives audio data, processes, amplifies, and outputs the data via the loudspeaker system of the car, implements the F-block audio amplifier, a B audio A 2.4. The audio data is received over one or more sinks, for which the F-block implements the necessary functions as described in section 4.3.5. Typical settings for output of audio signal, example, volume, bass, fader, and treble are controlled via corresponding functions. Additionally, the F-block provides further functions to perform more specific adjustments of the amplifier functions, such as activating and deferring an equalizer function, equalizer off, equalizer setting, radio tuner, AM, FM tuner, F-block ID 0x40, the F-block AM tuner, FPAM FMT 2.0 for an AM FM tuner is described here as an example for the F-blocks defined by the most specification for different kinds of radio tuners. Example, the F-block DAB tuner for the digital radio standard DAB, the F-block STARS for a digital satellite radio. The following main functions are defined by the specific tuner. The function 80 frequency, 80 waveband, 80 station info, deliver information about the currently set frequency, the wave band and the station received. Example, its name or program type. A station scan is started with the function 80 seek, where different settings are possible. Example, direction of scan up and down. F-block AM tuner supports the administration of several station memories, though a simple tuner only needs to implement one station list by means of the function 80 preset same. The current frequency can be stored in a specific list. The function 80 preset list 1 and 80 preset 2 provide access to station lists with detailed information. The function 80 preset short list 1 to 80 preset short list 8 to list with limited station information. Further functions control the behavior of the AMF tuner when there are traffic reports. The function TA info indicates the names of the current traffic program, and an active traffic report is signalized by the function TA message. It can be interrupted by TA escape with the TPS switch. The functionality for receiving traffic reports is switched on or off. Additionally, the F-block AM FM tuner has functions for different options to control the behavior of the tuner. The function RDSS switch, for example, switches the use of RDSS signal on or off. Connection of mobile devices, AUXIN, F-block ID 0x24. The F-block AUXIN is also based on F-block general player C F-block AUXIN 3.5 and is implemented by a MOS device that acts as a gateway to connect mobile MP3 players and other storage devices with music data to a MOS system. The F-block AUXIN supports mobile devices with their own administration of stored music data, such as Apple's iPod, a device on which the data is only stored in a network file system such as a USB stick. In the specification of the F-block AUXIN, the former are called database devices, the later mass storage devices. Additionally, device can also be connected via an analog audio input. Additionally, to the function of the general player already described of the F-block audio disc player, there are the following extensions. Some functions are an adaptation of the function of general player that became necessary due to much higher number of tracks of different access mode. These are aux track position as an adaptation for track position, aux track information as supplement for track information, or aux time information as supplement for time position. Additional functions provide information about the connected devices. Each device class as well as its concrete type can be determined by a function aux device info. The function device browsing capabilities inform about the categories of music files that can be queried on a database device, such as querying all tracks of an artist or all tracks of a specific genre. In order to query the possibly very comprehensive metadata for music tracks stored on a device, the F-block AUXIN defines the functions select audio list info, which supports querying functions comparable to database queries. Two filters indicate which tracks are to be considered during the query and which information about the tracks, that is title, song of the song, artist, and name of the album, is to be sent back. In addition, the sorting sequence on the specific section for the data to be transmitter can be indicated for optimizing the presentation on the display. Select current audio list info is similar to select audio list info. However, when select audio list info considers all music files stored on the attracted device, attached device, select current audio list info only relates to the currently selected track list. With the function select audio list filter, the current list of the tracks for playback can be selected by setting a filter similar to the one used for querying in select audio list info. The currently active filter is read out via the function current audio list filter. In version 3.5 of the Oxin block, the function select cover out and select current cover out have been added to request information about the cover out stored with the music files on the mobile devices. The function retrieve cover out can be used to retrieve the corresponding picture file. Various other settings can be determined via additional functions. For example, whether the metadata is to be transmitted via control channel or packet data channel, async control switch. Example of Oxin. This section explains the use of a block in a MOS system based on the example of the block Oxin. For this purpose, important message sequence when accessing a block are described. These sequences are based on ones described. In the specification of the block Oxin 3.5, there are only example. Individual tasks could be implemented in a different manner. When initializing the system, the controller sends a notification. It requires, for example, for updating HMI representation in case of a plug Oxin. This is amongst others the status of Oxin device, tech status, the number of currently active track, aux track position and track information, and its playtime position afterwards. The controller is informed whether the device has moved to the next track and can update the information on the HMI accordingly. If the user requests a functionality of the connected device, the controller must transform this request into corresponding command to the XBlock Oxin. The following example, the device is set into play mode via the property status. The resulting changes are sent back through the previously notified properties. The controller uses this information as well as the metadata of the now playing track that it queries actively from the slave for updating its HMI representation. The setting of notification during initialization is shown in Oxin controller and Oxin. Figure 4.1 shows the querying information about the currently playing music track via the function select current audio list with both the identifier tag as well as the title, the artist, and the media type of the currently playing track is queried. The current track is indicated by the value 0 for the parameter start. In the response, the actual position of the track in the current track is contained. In our example, it is the first track of the current track list. The controller initiates this sequence, for example, if it has requested an action of the block Oxin, or if the slave notifies a change of its status, for example, that it has skipped to the next track. If the user searches for a specific track by browsing through the media database of the device via the HMI controller, the controller has to query the information for the corresponding list of media files from a block Oxin. Usually, the HMI offers different options for viewing the list of tracks, indicating specific properties of the tracks, artist, album, genres, songs. Setting in the play mode, details are shown here. Request current metadata, update notification, Oxin, controller Oxin. Then querying of metadata for the currently playing track is shown here. Querying of a list of artists are shown here. Thank you.